Okay, and what's going to be coming up next exactly? What is...
It's hard to predict that, and the reason is because we thought that we had a good short-term project lined up, and that was an extension of the Green Line going westward. It actually goes underneath the Poplar Viaduct, where Walnut Grove sort of dips down.
With, yeah.
And the difficulty we're having is that there's live rail that has to be crossed to get to the fairgrounds area from the existing right-of-way that the county has already obtained. The right-of-way actually ends underneath the Poplar Viaduct, but you have to be able to go somewhere from there. Otherwise, it's a bridge to nowhere. Essentially, you would have a dead end. So the idea was to create a connection point that would allow us to go southward toward the fairgrounds, first to Toby Park, which is where you would cross the live rail at Garden Lane.
Oh, okay.
And that would get people into Toby Park, and from there heading southward toward the fairgrounds, which has a new development called the Kroc Center that's being done with this in combination. It's being done by the Salvation Army, and it's a very nice complex, and it would also connect the Beltline community to the Green Line, and it would also be a way for people who live in Cooper Young to be able to get to the Green Line. The difficulty is that there's a small community just south of Poplar, and it's the Humes Heights neighborhood, and the problem is that they had a series of break-ins 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, and so they petitioned the city to put up a gate to prevent people from getting onto their street, and they don't. Their concerns have to do with privacy and with protection. And they love the Green Line, and there are several people in that little area that use the Green Line. They just don't want it going down their street. So they've asked that the people who are involved in developing this corridor do the due diligence to see if there's another way to cross the live rails other than Garden Lane. I don't think that will turn out to be practical, but we owe it to that neighborhood to do that due diligence.
So you are still going through with it if you can find...
We're still going through with it on the assumption that we can meet the concerns for privacy and security of the Humes Heights neighborhood, because we're not in the business of bullying a neighborhood. What makes our movement strong is that we've been able to work with neighborhoods, and we really need that process to continue down that path.
And what are the plans for the Overton Park?
The plans, the connector to Overton Park, originally we had put forward the idea of going up north on Scott Street and then going westward on Broad to go to Overton Park. And we discussed this idea, this was well over a year ago, with a group called Livable Memphis. And Livable Memphis is funded in part by the city of Memphis, in part through donations. Livable Memphis decided to adopt this project as their own. And rather than going up Scott Street, they thought it was better to use Tillman, Tillman being less of a security risk in their eyes than Scott, and that they would then go from Tillman up to Broad Street and put bike lanes on Broad to go into Overton Park. And the reason for that is that Broad Street, or I guess it's, yeah, Broad, Broad was sort of an orphaned street. It was cut off at the point that Sam Cooper Boulevard was built. And ever since then, the merchants on Broad have suffered. And it has become, I won't say a derelict neighborhood, that is certainly not the case, because there's a lot of money being put into that area, the Binghamton area. But the merchants suffered from a lack of traffic. And we assumed, it just as happens with many other trails, that the Green Line would be a catalyst for economic activity along Broad, and that there's not that much car traffic because the car traffic travels on Sam Cooper Boulevard, not on Broad. So we felt like it was quite feasible to have bike lanes on Broad, and Livable Memphis agreed with that position, and they are now going through the process of picking a designer for the corridor that will go from the end of the Green Line to Overton Park, and that selection process is down to 2 finalists at this point.